And now we're going to move into our next speaker, which is our very own Jay Graham. So just a note, Jay is now on the committee. About a year ago, a year and a half ago, he approached and expressed an interest in being on the committee, but for some reason he hadn't quite retired then yet, and somehow he couldn't juggle both the work and KansasFest. I don't know why, but perhaps since joining the committee, he's hopefully not regretting his decision. But I know it's been a pleasure to have him on the committee so far, and it's great to have him on board. But today he will be telling us all about the BlueSCSI device and its untapped potential. So take it away, Jay.
Thank you so much, Chris. Yeah, it's interesting. I retired about a year ago, and now I'm much more busier now than I was when I was working. So I'll go ahead and get this up here. Can everybody see the screen? All right. So yeah, today I'm going to talk about beyond booting, and this is the untapped potential of the BlueSCSI. My foray into the BlueSCSI was interesting. It was probably about right before the pandemic, probably 6 or 7 years ago. I was looking for, as everybody is looking for, the old hard drives, the old spinning physical hard drives for the Apple IIs and the Macintoshes were dying at a miraculous rate. I actually have a whole Tupperware box of dead SCSI drives downstairs. And so I went around looking. I heard there were these things. So I was looking at the SCSI 2 SD, and some of the other things that were available. And I ordered a few of them, and they were really, really hard to use. So one day I saw this ad for the BlueSCSI. And I'm like, oh, I'm going to order one of these. It was a kit. I put it together, plugged it in, followed the simple directions for it, and miraculously everything worked. So it was like at that point, I wrote Eric Helgeson, who was one of the co-creators of it, and said, hey, this thing is awesome. Do you need people to make these and sell these for you? I think more people need to see these. And oddly enough, he said yes. And so I actually became an authorized reseller. So this is like the Hair Club for Men commercial. So I'm not only an authorized reseller, but I'm a customer. So what I'm going to do today is talk about some of the things that are the untapped potential for this. Some of the things that you wouldn't think would be in just a SCSI disk drive replacement. So I'll go over briefly what it is and how does it work, and then some basic key features, and then talk mainly about some of the untapped features. So just simply and quickly, the BlueSCSI, what is it and how does it work? Well, it's open source hardware SCSI emulator. There's a lot of them out there. This, I think, is by far, in my opinion, the easiest to use. It's maintained by a passionate community of retrocomputing enthusiasts, and there's everybody in there. And when they get together, Vintage Computer Festival Midwest, we're going to have a big table there that's going to be all BlueSCSI. Obviously, it was originally designed to replace the aging or failed SCSI storage. It utilizes the latest version. Utilizes the Raspberry Pi Pico microcontroller. The older version used the one of the STM32s. It emulates a lot of SCSI devices, including CD-ROMs, hard drives, optical drives, and a lot more, ROM drives, and a lot more. The official website is BlueSCSI.com. And today, I'm not meaning for this to be a tutorial on how to do all of these things, a step-by-step tutorial. What I want to do is introduce you to some of these features that even some of the people that have been using BlueSCSIs for a while may not know about. And then I have a URL on the bottom of my slides, which will be made available, where you can go to the actual BlueSCSI.com website and read the how-to on how to get it started. So some of the basic key features of this is versatile emulation. It supports up to 7 simultaneous SCSI devices. It's high performance. It achieves data transfer speeds up to 18 megabits per second with the new Ultra SCSI Fast 20 support. And it has some Wi-Fi networking. So with the Raspberry Pi Pico W, the wireless version of the Pico, it can emulate a DaynaPORT SCSI, link, enabling some of the wireless networking capabilities. And I'll talk a little bit before this or on this. And then it has an initiator mode on it, which allows direct imaging of existing SCSI drives, facilitating data preservation and migration. It's like using a modern PC to archive data from an old hard drive. And I'll talk a little bit more about that. And then the user-friendly interface, the BlueSCSI has a toolbox utility that provides a utility that runs on the native device for things like file transfer, CD image swapping, and some of the system control directly from the vintage machine without having to go through a modern computer. Here's an example. There's 4 types of it or versions of it right now. The 2 on the left are the desktop version with the 50-pin IDC that replaces the normal, internal spinning SCSI drives. The second one is the DB20, what we call the DB25, and that is one that plugs into the 25-pin SCSI port basically on the back of most of the 68K and modern Macs. Then there's a Centronics version, which uses the 36-pin Centronics, which you can plug into the back, a daisy chain into one of the back of the old external SCSI drives. And then obviously we have the portable version that runs on the MacBook and the MacBook, laptop machines. So some of the advanced features, and then again, these are some of the features that even many BlueSCSI users don't know about. So we'll talk about Wi-Fi networking with the DaynaPORT, the BlueSCSI toolbox operations, the ROM disk support, initiator mode, we'll go over that a little bit, the Ultra SCSI Fast 20 support, the USB to SCSI bridge mode, the thumb drive mode, the raw mode operation, just a little bit on the logging of it, and then talk just briefly on some of the I2C and the quick integration on it. That's still in a closed alpha. Now notice that I have by these features, whether it's the desktop or the DB25, and then because again, some of these features are only available on the desktop only. So the first thing is the DaynaPORT emulation. So what is the DaynaPORT? This is a picture of the old DaynaPORT. I'm sure many of us had these over the years, and believe it or not, it's a SCSI network adapter running Ethernet at 10 megabits per second over twisted pair. You have on the back a twisted pair in the picture in the upper right. You have an RJ45 twisted pair 10 megabit Ethernet. And then on the other side, you have the 36-pin SCSI, which used that regular 25-pin to 36-pin cable. You plug this in. That's how you connect it to Ethernet. Well, you don't need to do all of that now because the DaynaPORT emulation has some hardware requirements. It obviously needs a BlueSCSI V2, version 2, with the Raspberry Pi Pico installed, SD card formatted for either FAT32 or EXFAT. Obviously, a vintage computer. It could be a Macintosh. Important point, this works on a lot more vintage computers other than the Apple II and the Macintosh. It also works on the Atari, the Amiga, and we'll see support a little bit later on for that. And then a Wi-Fi network. Unfortunately, it only works on the 2.4 gigahertz only right now. That's because the Pico W doesn't support the 5 gigahertz. So you need one of the legacy machine, legacy wireless network, and it uses Mac TCP and Open Transport on the Macintosh, which were 2 programs back then that allowed you to connect to the internet. And then obviously, once you get this configured, you can connect to FTP or BBS systems, and I'll make sure that there's a list of them available, and there's a list of them available on the DaynaPORT. And then again, there's the URL for more information on how to configure it. Again, because I'm not going to go step by step on how to configure it today. Now, the next thing I wanted to talk about was the BlueSCSI Toolbox. So what is the BlueSCSI Toolbox? This is a suite of onboard software utilities that basically enhance and enable convenience for vintage computer users to access the BlueSCSI directly from the native machine and no need to remove the SD card. Some of the key features of this is a file transfer utility. It allows you to copy files to and from the SD card over the emulated SCSI interface, and it eliminates the need to eject the card and use it in a modern, and put your images on there in a modern machine. You can do it directly. It allows for CD image swapping, which you can swap between ISO images in real time within the Vintage OS. And this is ideal from games and multi-disc software. System control tools, it allows you to reboot the BlueSCSI, refresh the mounted drives, and toggle some of the different modes on there. And it has a graphical control panel. I'll show you on the next slide what some of it is. Real-time configuration, cross-platform compatibility. It works on the Macintosh, Amiga, Atari, and more. We'll see on the next slide here. And then it has a Wi-Fi desk accessory for the Macintosh that basically it helps you enable the Wi-Fi, relatively easy on the BlueSCSI. And the toolbox mimics the convenience of modern storage and device management, but in a way your 80s Macintosh or other platform understands. So here's what it looks like on the Mac. There's the SD transfer that allows you to download files, the CD changer or upload files, the CD changer, and then the Wi-Fi desk accessory. So platforms that it currently supports are the classic Mac, the Amiga, the Atari, MS-DOS, Windows, and IRIX for the Silicon Graphics IRIX. In progress is the web, the Next Machine, and BEOS. And again, at the bottom, there's the URL for more information on the toolbox. So next is ROM drive support. You can actually create a ROM drive by using the Pico's flash memory and act as a read-only device. The ROM drive is assigned a SCSI ID, so it can exist on there along with other peripherals as long as the IDs are different, and it can store up to 1692 kilobytes in size. This is similar to a hard drive image, but it can't be written to once it's been flashed. It's actually flashed on the Pico. You can think of it as a CD-ROM image that's permanently written to your BlueSCSI. Because again, it's flashed with special firmware and it actually sits on the Pico and not on the SD card. This is good for booting your Macintosh if you have a mini boot system designed for your Atari, Macintosh, or whatever. You can or Amiga, you can boot from that. This I think will be handy for the next machine. So if we can get something to boot in 1692K. You can, and again, you can combine this with the DaynaPORT for the ultimate retro convenience rig. And again, there's more information on there. Now, Initiator mode. This is something that was new to version 2, and this is a real interesting device because KansasFest, I think it was 2 years ago, 3 years ago, maybe now, I can't remember. I demonstrated how to back up your old Apple II disk drives and your Macintosh drives simply by putting this BlueSCSI in the SCSI chain, having a blank drive on there and just drag copying it. Well, now you don't really need to do that. You can use what's called Initiator mode. Initiator is the SCSI term for a host device. So it's like a SCSI card or a built-in SCSI PC. So you can kind of turn this thing into a SCSI card, if you will. And it's the device which initiates the communication on the bus. The target is the SCSI term for something like a hard drive, a CD-ROM drive, tape drive, zip drive, whatever. So the target is the device on which the initiator is attempting to communicate with and actually clone. And this is useful for cloning drives. And Initiator mode compatibility, you can see there is a wide range of devices that you can back up this way. These are ones that have been tested. Obviously, there's more that are being tested and added to this list every day. So what does it look like? Well, it's pretty simple. You have a 50-pin SCSI cable like I have there. The only reason it's sitting close to my LC is I needed to power the disk drive. But if you have an external 12-volt power supply, you can power the disk drive with anything. So yes, it is a Connor CP3040A. It is working. It's one that I have working. I probably have about 30 of these things that are not working, but this one actually works. You can put an optional LED on the drive if it fits. You just basically wire a 2-lead LED, and that's helpful when you're cloning the drive because you can actually see the drive spinning on there. And then you have the BlueSCSI desktop, and you just set some jumpers. There's like 3 jumpers that you set on it, and you put it into initiator mode. And then with any luck, what happens is it will start and recognize the SCSI drive, the 34A, and then it'll basically start backing up that drive to an SD image on the BlueSCSI. So once you're done, you'll have an exact duplicate of that hard drive in a ready-to-use SD image for the BlueSCSI. And you can, as you can see, it's pretty fast here. This is a real-time video that I did on my Connor. It's only a 40 meg, 40 meg drive. But you see that it actually happens pretty fast. And then again, this is real easy for if you have hard drives on how to back them up onto SD cards so that you can use them in your BlueSCSI and kind of put this thing on the shelf, to let it die peacefully. And again, there's the URL on there on how to use the initiator mode. And I'll talk a little bit about initiator mode later on here. So UltraSCSI Fast 20 support. It supports the UltraSCSI Fast 20 timings with overclock. This overclock is like more speed for compatible cards. You're going to need a SCSI card that supports the UltraSCSI Fast 20 with a 50-pin connector or an HD 68 to 50-pin adapter. It needs to be 50-pin, obviously, to mate, to the BlueSCSI. And there's a couple of commands that you drop in the SCSI.ini file, and voila, you're off flying at the UltraSCSI Fast 20 speeds. Here are some of the working devices right now. Most of them are the Adaptec cards. I'm not going to go through this slide. I'll let you guys read it on there. And then there's some other ones that are non-Adaptec here as well that have been tested. And again, it's important thing is these are ones that have tested. These are not ones that have been tried. As we try more of them and people in the community try more of them and verify that it works, this list will obviously increase. Okay, next is USB to SCSI bridge mode. This is an interesting thing because I'm showing you here a picture of one of the Adaptec USB exchange devices. These are very expensive and very, very difficult to find on eBay. They're $150 to $200 is what I was seeing these things go for. BlueSCSI goes for about $50. So you can actually use the initiator mode on here. It needs to be an initiator mode, but you can set this up to be a USB to SCSI bridge. And this mode allows you to connect a SCSI device to your modern computer over USB. Now, the caveat here is that your host OS needs to support the file system type that you're trying to emulate, on there. But this replaces a lot of the expensive USB to SCSI and hard to find USB to SCSI bridges. There's also a thumb drive mode, and it lets your SD card show up as a USB drive for easy file transfers. Interesting feature. I don't use it all that much, but I use it sometimes. But when you plug the BlueSCSI in, your SD card is going to show up as a thumb drive by default. And I have a picture of it there in the lower left. You can obviously disable this behavior. You just throw a single statement in the BlueSCSI.ini to say enable USB mass storage equals false. Raw mode operation. This is for advanced users. There's no real speed advantage over this to the file-based setup, but this is raw mode. This is kind of how the old SCSI 2 SDs worked. Raw mode allows you to use the entire SD card as a drive image. And instead of copying the files on there and using the file-based image, you kind of format the whole SD card as a hard drive. And this is like treating the SD card like a real hard disk, not just a file container. And you can use this mode, at the same time, though I'd back up data before attempting to do this. It's in alpha mode right now. Logging. It has a very, very, very thorough logging system. It'll log initial things, but if you put the debug equals 1 in the BlueSCSI.ini, you can basically look at the entire log as it scrolls by. You can also hook a USB cable up to the Pico, a micro USB, and use a terminal like CoolTerm or something like that, and you can actually see the logging information as it scrolls by on the terminal. Now, interestingly enough, this is used for troubleshooting, yes, but it also allows you to look at the log file and improve the speed and reliability of your BlueSCSI by tweaking some of the many, many parameters that are available. And last but not least, we have I2C and Quick 2 integration, or Quick integration. Quick integration is a plug-and-play electronic system for sensors and controls. SparkFun, it's by SparkFun, and it's used to prototype some of the I2C components. And then I2C obviously stands for integrated circuit. So this will integrate with this system through this protocol, and it allows for expanded functionalities like web-based control and some other things. The BlueSCSI toolbox, there's a web edition for this that allows you to control your BlueSCSI via a web interface from your iPhone or your Android phone, or even a modern computer, or even your retro computer. And it supports things like mounting drive images, ejecting images, runtime configuration of the BlueSCSI, and a lot more. Now, here's an interesting one where I did this. Oh, by the way, the thing on the right here, and this is on the website, you need to use a Pico that is wired specifically for the for the Quick and the I2C Connect, and there's instructions on how to do that. But you'll notice I have a button there, and I have my toolbox Pico W, and then I have my SCSI desktop there. And then here is Eric Helgerson's. You see he has a dial, a button, an I2C display, and obviously the toolbox one there. And then there's some examples of the web edition and the web interface there. And if you're more interested in this, more is being developed on this. And obviously, go to the URL at the bottom here, and it'll show you more about the Toolbox web. So where do I get a BlueSCSI? Well, if you go to BlueSCSI.com, many of us are resellers of this. I'm selling them on eBay under the name JWG1. And obviously, this is an open source project, so you can get all of the things you need to build your own. Now, what I want to do is I'm actually going to give away 2 BlueSCSIs, and I have a couple of questions. See who is paying attention to my presentation. And the way we're going to do this is we're going to do this by going over to the Discord chat, and whoever is the first one to type the answer in the Discord chat, I will DM you after the presentation to get your mailing address, and I'll send you a BlueSCSI. Now, I only sell the DB25 and the desktop, so you need to say, or I'll need to ask you which one you want, either the DB25 or the desktop version. So I'm going to, yeah, it's a test. So I'm going to, again, say, go over to the Discord, get ready to type, and get ready to answer the questions. Spelling and grammar do not count. So all I need to do is be able to legibly read the answer to the question. So I'm just stalling a little bit so I make sure that everybody's over there. All right, here we go. So the first question is, what is the name of the onboard software suite that allows native file transfers, CD image swapping, and system control without removing the SD card? Testing, testing, testing. All right, I think I have an answer over there. So it is the BlueSCSI toolbox. So next question, last question, is what feature of the BlueSCSI lets a vintage Macintosh connect to a modern Wi-Fi network using SCSI emulation? Ooh, initiator mode. Close. Nope. Very first thing I talked about. I'll give some hints there. Yep, somebody got it. The DaynaPORT. Yep, the DaynaPORT emulation. So I'll do this. I'll do this later. I can't see who won because it's scrolling by so quickly. But we'll announce later who won the 2 BlueSCSIs. And like I said, I'll DM you, get your address, your shipping address, and whether you want the DB25 model or the desktop model. That is all I have today. Any questions?
All right. Thank you so much, Jay. We have quite a few questions, and I probably won't be able to get to all of them, but let's just start here. So DJ Pop Tart asks, I have a Apple IIgs ROM 1. What would be a recommended SCSI card to use with the BlueSCSI 25 that I use on my Macintosh SE?
That's a very good question. And actually, I showed that at KansasFest a couple of years ago. Obviously, the Apple SCSI Fast SCSI card will work in there with the DB25. I've tried that. I've actually tried the CMS SCSI card, and obviously the SCSI from card emulators from like GG Labs will work as well. And again, you can go out on the BlueSCSI.com site, and there are all of the boards that have been tested there. Now, the one thing that I should mention is, like the Mac Plus, some of the SCSI boards for the Apple II do not supply what's called terminating power. Some of them allow you to solder a diode on there and modify the card to supply the terminating power. But if they don't, and again, it's all on BlueSCSI.com. If they don't, you'll simply need to power that DB25 BlueSCSI from the micro USB.
All right, thank you. Next question. Pitar says, I need to use my BlueSCSI a lot more. Does BlueSCSI support virtual SCSI tape drives?
Ooh, it will support tape drives. There are some out there on there. I have not personally tried it with a tape drive. I do have a Hewlett-Packard tape drive down there that I could try. But yes, it will support tape drives, especially. I don't know why you would want to do this, but you can. I've seen and heard of people using the Initiator mode to dump their tapes to the SD card that way, because the magnetic media obviously is aging. But you can actually, dump some of your tapes to the SD card on the BlueSCSI using the Initiator mode. Good question, Peter.
And then very last question, Peter asks, are there technical reasons why the Apple II doesn't support the BlueSCSI toolbox or networking? And you have 1 minute.
Yeah, it's real easy to answer this. Simply, the code hasn't been written for that yet. Obviously, we are looking to do there. The whole community, Eric and his crew are looking to do that. But they got a lot of them in works. But again, this is a community-driven project. So if somebody wants to take it upon themselves to write the toolbox or do the networking for the Apple II, I'm sure we won't complain. In the community.
All right. Thank you so much, Jay.